A woman sits in a shadowed courtyard drawing a map of the universe with hot beeswax. She is not writing a book, but rather creating a piece of cloth that someone will wear to walk through their daily life. The heavy tropical air smells of wood smoke and melting resin. Somewhere in the distance, a neighborhood radio plays the slow, metallic chime of a gamelan orchestra. A motorbike rumbles down a narrow alleyway and fades into the humid afternoon. But inside this small stone courtyard in the heart of Java, the only sound that matters is the soft scrape of copper against fine cotton. A woman sits on a low wooden stool. Over her knees rests a vast stretch of white fabric. In her right hand, she holds a tiny brass instrument called a canting. It looks like a miniature smoking pipe, but instead of smoke, it drips liquid wax. She blows gently on the hot liquid to cool it, then touches the brass spout to the cloth. A perfect, microscopic dot of amber wax sinks into the thread, then another. She does not use a ruler. She does not trace a stencil. She relies entirely on muscle memory and quiet devotion. Why would a master artisan spend months tracing thousands of microscopic dots with hot wax onto a single length of fabric, only to dye it, boil it, and begin the process all over again? What is hidden inside these patterns that makes an entire nation refuse to let them go? Welcome to Culture Journey. When you step out onto the streets of Indonesia, especially here on the island of Java, you are immediately swallowed by a rushing tide of sensory details. The heat wrapping around your shoulders, the smell of frying garlic and sweet soy sauce drifting from wooden street carts, the chaotic symphony of millions of people moving, building, striving, and living in one of the most rapidly changing nations on earth. It is easy to look at the towering glass skyscrapers of Jakarta or the massive shopping complexes of Surabaya and assume that the past has been paved over by the future. But if you stop walking and you simply watch the people passing by, you will notice something quietly astonishing. You will see men riding scooters through the rain, wearing collared shirts covered in complex geometric brown and blue patterns. You will see office workers stepping out of air-conditioned corporate buildings wearing the exact same swirling motifs. You will see grandmothers in traditional markets wrapping their waists in cloth covered in falling stars and curling ferns. They are wearing batik. But to call batik a fabric is a profound misunderstanding. Batik is not something you wear simply because it looks beautiful. It is an identity. It is a visual language. It is the skin of Indonesia. To understand how a single piece of cloth can hold the soul of an entire culture, we have to sit beside someone who understands its weight. Her name is Ibu Tari. She is sitting in the shaded pavilion of her family home in Surakarta, a city that most locals simply call Solo. This city is one of the ancient royal capitals of Java, a place where tradition is not a performance for visitors, but a daily rhythm. Ibu Tari is 68 years old. Her hands are a landscape of their own. If you look closely at her fingers, you will notice that her skin is tinted with the faintest shade of indigo, a permanent stain from a lifetime of working with natural dyes. She works in silence. Her breathing seems to match the slow drop of the wax. When you watch her work, you begin to realize that what she is doing challenges every assumption we have about how art is created. Usually, when a painter wants to make a mark, they apply color to a canvas. They add something, but the artisan of batik is doing the exact opposite. Batik is an art of resistance. The hot wax Ibu Tari applies does not contain any color. Its entire purpose is to protect the white cloth from the dye. When she draws a flower or a geometric star or a sweeping wave, she is drawing a barrier. She is sealing those specific threads away, preserving their purity. Later, when the fabric is submerged in dark blue or deep brown dye, the protected areas will resist the color. The negative space becomes the art. It is a deeply Javanese philosophy made physical. True strength lies not in forcing your will upon the world, but in maintaining inner calm and preserving your purity amidst the shifting colors of life. Could you imagine living this way? Approaching your own life not by constantly accumulating things, but by carefully deciding what you must protect and preserve. But the story does not end there. What Ibu Tari traces onto the cotton is not merely decorative. She is writing a silent, highly specific language. The first word she writes is a pattern called Kawung. To the untrained eye, it looks like a repeating series of overlapping circles, perhaps resembling a four-petaled flower or a sliced palm fruit. But in the ancient courts of Java, the Kawung was reserved only for royalty. The empty space at the center of the four petals represents the source of universal energy. It symbolizes a heart that is empty of worldly desires, a reminder to the king that true power requires absolute humility. Imagine putting on a shirt in the morning, and the very pattern on your shoulders is a centuries-old command to remain humble. Just a few miles away in the neighboring royal city of Yogyakarta, a different pattern dominates the memory of the streets. It is called parang. It looks like jagged, diagonal swords or crashing waves sweeping across the fabric in relentless parallel lines. The legend says that a great Javanese ruler created this pattern after sitting in deep meditation on the jagged cliffs of the southern coast. He watched the violent waves of the ocean endlessly crashing against the rocks. The water never surrendered. The rocks never broke. The parang pattern became a symbol of quiet resilience, of inner courage, and the endless dedication to refining one's own character. When a father gives a piece of parang batik to his son, he is not just giving him a garment. He is handing him a philosophy. He is telling him to never give up. In our modern world, we buy clothes online with a single click. We wear them for a season and throw them away. Clothing has become disposable. We have forgotten that what we wear can mean something. Standing in this quiet Javanese courtyard, watching months of human labor poured into a single length of cotton, it becomes difficult not to think about the things we choose to surround ourselves with. What would it change if the clothes you wore carried the prayers of the person who made them? What if you wore your ancestors on your sleeve? The collision of this deep, slow, spiritual tradition with the reality of modern Indonesia creates a fascinating tension. On a Friday morning in Jakarta, one of the most congested and hyper-modern megacities on the planet, millions of people participate in Batik Friday. The bankers, the politicians, the baristas, and the school children all wear the cloth of their ancestors. It is a striking paradox. You have businessmen closing million-dollar technology deals on smartphones while wearing patterns designed by mystics hundreds of years ago. Ancient cosmology riding the subway. The fast world wrapped inside the slow cloth. They may not all know the deep philosophical meaning of the specific pattern they are wearing, but they know exactly what it feels like to wear it. It feels like belonging. But a master artisan applying wax is only half the story. To truly bring these patterns to life, the pristine cloth must now face something much more violent. After Ibu Tari finishes applying the wax, a process that can take weeks or even months for a highly complex piece, the fabric must undergo an alchemy of color. It is taken out of the quiet courtyard and brought to the dyers. The dyeing process is a physical, heavy, and wet labor. Traditional batik relies on the earth. Deep indigo blue is extracted from the fermented leaves of the indigo plant. The rich, warm brown known as soga is pulled from the bark of local trees. The smell here is entirely different. It is thick and earthy. The scent of wet soil, of crushed indigo leaves fermenting in massive clay vats, a kind of ancient living chemistry. The fabric is submerged into the massive vats of liquid color. The cotton drinks the dye, soaking in the darkness, while the wax holds firm, silently protecting the hidden patterns beneath. The cloth is dried in the sun, then submerged again, sometimes dozens of times to achieve the perfect depth of color. Only later do we understand why this matters. Because the most magical moment in the life of a batik cloth is not when the wax is applied or when the dye is soaked in. The magic happens at the very end, in a process called ngelorod. The darkened, stiff, heavily waxed cloth is plunged into a large vat of violently boiling water. The heat melts the wax. The hardened barrier softens and dissolves, slipping away into the bubbling water. And as the wax disappears, the cloth is pulled from the steam. The true pattern is finally revealed. The pristine white lines, untouched by the dark dye, shine brightly against the deep background. The truth that was protected all along is finally brought into the light. It is a moment of pure revelation. If you take a piece of authentic hand-drawn batik and look at it very closely, you will notice something beautiful. The lines are never perfectly straight. One dot of wax might be slightly larger than the one next to it. The edge of a leaf might waver just a fraction of a millimeter. A tiny crack in the wax might have let a microscopic vein of blue dye seep into the white space. In a factory machine, these would be considered flaws. But here, they are proof of a human heartbeat. They are the physical evidence that a living, breathing person sat in a courtyard and poured their time into the fabric. The machine can make a pattern flawless, but the machine cannot give it a soul. The imperfection is precisely what makes the cloth alive. Perhaps that is why so many people feel drawn to this craft. In an age of artificial perfection and mechanical replication, our eyes are desperate for the slight tremor of the human hand. We crave the imperfect because we are imperfect. What would be hardest for you to let go of if you were asked to spend 6 months working on a single project, knowing that a single drop of misplaced wax could alter the entire design? It requires a kind of patience that modern society is rapidly forgetting how to teach. Ibu Tari hangs the freshly washed fabric on a bamboo line to catch the afternoon breeze. The rich brown and blue fabric flutters against the sky. She does not sign her name in the corner of the cloth. The master artisan disappears into her work. Her ego is dissolved in the boiling water along with the wax. She is simply a vessel, passing a memory from the ancestors to the next generation. This cloth will leave her courtyard tomorrow. It might be purchased by a mother to make a sling to carry her newborn baby, wrapping the child in a pattern of safety and health. It might be tailored into a beautiful dress for a bride, covered in the Truntum pattern, small, starry flowers that symbolize a love that grows quietly and steadily in the dark. Or it might one day be gently draped over a wooden coffin, carrying the departed softly into the next world. Batik holds the Indonesian soul from the very first breath to the final quiet departure. It is the companion to a human life. The sun begins to set over the terracotta roofs of Surakarta. The swallows dart through the fading orange light. The heat of the day finally breaks, replaced by the cool evening wind blowing down from the volcanic slopes. The streets begin to calm, and families gather on their porches. When you travel, you realize that history is not just something written in books or locked inside glass museum cases. History is something people carry with them. It is cooked in their kitchens, sung in their evenings, and worn on their backs. To understand a culture, you do not need to memorize dates or names of kings. You only need to look at what they refuse to let fade away. The people of Java and of all Indonesia have held on to this cloth through colonization, through war, through revolution, and through the dizzying speed of modern globalization. They held on to it because it reminds them of who they are. It reminds them that true beauty requires patience, that we must protect the pure things inside us, that our imperfections are what make us human, and that some stories are too important to simply be told. They must be worn. If you found value in this journey, and if you want to continue walking slowly through the world with us to discover the quiet stories that connect us all, I invite you to subscribe, share this experience with someone you care about, and leave a thought below. Until we travel together again, take care of yourself and take time to notice the invisible threads that hold your own world together.